office the government that had gone to war despite overwhelming popular opposition, taking its orders from Crawford, Texas, and winning plaudits for its leadership in the new Europe that is the hope for democracy. Few, if any, commentators noted that Spanish voters in March 2004 were taking about the same position as the large majority of people in the United States. Spanish troops should remain in Iraq only under UN authority. The major differences between the two countries are that in Spain, public opinion was known, but not in the United States, and in Spain, the issue came to a vote, almost unimaginable in the United States. More evidence of the serious deterioration of functioning democracy, even by the standards of similar societies. What would the results of the 2004 elections have been if either of the political parties had been willing to articulate and represent the concerns of the population on issues they regard as important? Or if these issues could even have entered into public discussion within the mainstream? We can only speculate about that, but we do know that it did not happen. The aftermath to the elections followed the course one would expect in a failing state. When the Bush administration released its budget in February 2005, PIPA did a study of popular attitudes about what the budget should be. It revealed that popular attitudes are virtually the inverse of policy, with considerable consistency. Where the budget was to increase, the public wanted it to decline. Where it was to decline, the public wanted it to increase. PIPA's main conclusion was that the American public would significantly alter the Bush administration's recently proposed federal budget. The most dramatic changes were deep cuts in defense spending, a significant reallocation toward deficit reduction, and increases in spending on education, job training, reducing reliance on oil, and veterans. The deepest cut called for by the public was in the defense budget, on average 31%. Second largest was cuts in supplementals for Iraq and Afghanistan. That comes as little surprise with the long-term financial toll of Bush's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, estimated to run to more than $1.3 trillion, or $11,300 for every household in the United States, and uncountable effects on lost opportunities, not to speak of the human cost. Furthermore, a clear majority, 63%, favored rolling back the tax cuts for people with incomes over $200,000. Nevertheless, the Bush administration insisted that funding for the victims of Hurricane Katrina must come instead from social spending because of the continuing support for tax cuts, including those aimed at the wealthiest Americans, the press reported. Tax cuts remain politically sacrosanct, much like privatized health care. In contrast, government programs lack political support, enjoying only popular support. Accordingly, Congress proposed cutting food support for adults and children among the miserably poor to finance the reconstruction of New Orleans, where the victims were also overwhelmingly the miserably poor, and are not likely to be the main beneficiaries of the project. The public also called for spending increases, the largest ones for social spending, including sharp increases for education and job training and for employment. Clear majorities also called for sharp increases in medical research and veterans' benefits. In percentage terms, by far the largest increase the public wished to see was for conserving and developing renewable energy, an extraordinary 1,090%, or $24 billion, which also had the highest percentage of respondents, 70%, favoring an increase. One of the largest percentage increases in funding proposed, over 200%, was for the UN and UN peacekeeping operations. In brief, the public called for the deepest cuts in the programs that are most rapidly increasing and for substantial spending increases in areas that are shortchanged. Once again, these results provide very significant information for the population of a functioning democracy. Fortunately, the United States is a very free society, so it is possible to obtain the information. Unfortunately, an individual research project is required to discover it. Media coverage appears to have been zero. Public preferences on government spending correspond well to the results of public opinion studies. The findings reveal a dramatic divide between public opinion and public policy. The same has been found in many studies of major issues, the free trade agreements, to take a case already mentioned. Some of the reasons for the divide are occasionally recognized in the professional literature. Reaffirming the general conclusions of earlier studies in a careful analysis of the sources of U.S. foreign policy, Lawrence Jacob and Benjamin Page find, unsurprisingly, that the major influence is internationally oriented business corporations, with a secondary effect of experts, who, however, may themselves be influenced by business. Public opinion, in contrast, has little or no significant effect on government officials. As they note, the results would have been welcome to realists such as Walter Lippmann, who considered public opinion to be ill-informed and capricious, and warned that following public opinion would create a morbid derangement of the true functions of power and produce policies deadly to the very survival of the state as a free society. The realism is scarcely concealed ideological preference. One will search in vain for evidence of the superior acumen of those who have the major influence on policy, apart from their skill in protecting their own interests, much as Adam Smith observed. For decades, increasing sharply during the Reagan years, polls have shown that people do not feel that the government is responsive to the public will. In the most recent study, asked how much influence the views of the majority of Americans have on the decisions of elected officials in Washington, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 meaning not at all influential, and 10 meaning extremely influential, the mean response was 4.5, about half of what was considered acceptable. Confidence in the functioning of democracy was ranked lower for the United States than for Canada and Britain. The analysts suggest that the reservations Americans express about democracy promotion abroad may derive from a belief that the project might be needed at home. Institutionalizing state corporate control. The reactionary statists, who have a thin grip on political power, are dedicated warriors, with consistency and passion that approach caricature. Their policies serve the substantial people, in fact, an unusually narrow sector of them, and disregard or harm the underlying population and future generations. They are also seeking to use their current opportunities to institutionalize these arrangements, so that it will be no small task to reconstruct a more humane and democratic society. The Republicans in charge aren't just pro-business. Jeffrey Birnbaum reported accurately. They are also pro-government. One indication is the 30% increase in federal spending from 2000 to 2004, mostly for programs that are prime lobbying targets for the corporate system, which feeds on big government. In recognition of the pro-business, pro-government climate, the number of registered lobbyists in Washington has more than doubled since 2000 to more than 34,750, while the amount that lobbyists charge their new clients has increased by as much as 100%. To institutionalize further their linkage to the corporate sector, the reactionary statists who defame the term conservative have initiated what Republican power brokers call the K Street Project. Longtime Washington correspondent Elizabeth Drew describes this purge of the trade associations and lobbying organizations clustered on K Street in Washington as a more thorough, ruthless, vindictive, and effective attack on Democratic lobbyists and other Democrats who represent business and other organizations